Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football, and we are previewing the New York Giants game in Seattle for Sunday afternoon. And I hope you guys are enjoying the season so far. Seattle sits at 3-1. We had a little bit of a letdown game in Detroit last week, actually at the beginning of the week on Monday night. And the Seahawks really look to rebound in this game. Things are kind of aligning. Seattle's getting back most of their defensive players, sans Byron Murphy. And the New York Giants are going to miss two of their critical players in Neighbors, the wideout that they drafted in the first round, as well as their running back. Singletary is not looking like he's going to play. He's doubtful for tomorrow. Hasn't been completely ruled out, but it's not looking good for him. So they were already going to be struggling in their running game and their offense in general against our defense. And now I'm not exactly sure how they score points. So welcome in, Keith. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah. I kind of agree. Like, how do you, this is not a overly talented team, especially on their offense. And then Neighbors is probably their most talented player. I mean, he's a rookie, so there's some of that, but he's a really good player. To lose him and then to turn around and, also lose your running back. It's like, where does the offense come from? Daniel Jones, he's never impressed me as a good quarterback, and I'm just trying to figure out where he's going to be able to find help at all. So,
I think, Daniel Jones is one of those quarterbacks where if everything is perfect, he's a decent guy. He can move the ball. He's efficient when he doesn't have any pressure, and he stays in the pocket. He can get out and pick up a first down for you. He's not dynamic by any means, but he's not a slouch when it comes to moving around a little bit. But you mentioned it. Neighbors was their guy. They've got Wan'Dale Robinson as their other wideout, who's actually really pretty decent. But when you only have that guy, and really there's nothing else, they've got Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton. But nonetheless, those are guys that are pretty easy to cover. It's going to be
neither of those guys would get snaps if they were in Seattle.
Well, and the New York offense becomes very predictable. They can't run. They're already dead last running the ball in the NFL. Then they're averaging less than 4 yards per carry, and then you eliminate Devin Singletary from their rushing attack. And they already rushed for only 24 yards last week against Dallas. When they become myopic and all you have to do is focus on Daniel Jones and one wide receiver, that's going to be pretty. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but it's a lot easier to do that than if they come in full strength and we were kind of diminished as we were against the Lions. Seattle looks to rebound in this game in a big way, not only just to get a win, but to have their defense perform and look a lot better. I think this is definitely one of those get-right games where Seattle, I think, is going to be able to dictate terms on both sides of the ball. Now, you can talk about the New York Giants defense a little bit. I think there are some opportunities for New York to cause a few issues. I think one of their strengths is certainly their defensive line. I think probably one of the top 10 defensive lines in the NFL. Starts with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence there in the middle. They've got Kayvon Thibodeau, their first-round draft pick from a couple of years ago. And that threesome does kind of get after the quarterback. Their pressure rate is pretty decent. They've got 40 pressures between those guys on the year in 4 games. They're not top 20. Each one of those guys isn't a top 20 player right now, currently statistically in the NFL, but together as a group, they're pretty decent. But there's a big talent deficit with the Giants, and that's why they're 1-3. They've got Neighbors, Andrew Thomas at left tackle. They've got John Michael Schmitz at center, a prospect that we liked in the draft a lot a couple of years ago, but he really hasn't completely taken that spot and really been great. The defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Thibodeau, I mentioned. Other than that, they don't really have a lot of players that you could say would start for your team or any NFL team for that matter. But they do pressure. They have only allowed 4 red zone touchdowns in 4 games, so they do some things well on defense. They're going to present a challenge to Seattle to really kind of be on their game, for Geno Smith to have a great game, to make good decisions, take care of the ball, that sort of thing. But I think if Seattle does that, I see them scoring at will in this game. And then defensively, I think Seattle just gets off on this game. We had talked briefly about all the players coming back right before we push record. It's looking pretty good for Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, let's just jump to that. Like, Byron Murphy is still out, and everyone else is going to be back. You're looking at Julian Love will be back. Ken Walker will be back. We were talking about the defense, but Jerome Baker is going to be back. Leonard Williams is back. Boye Mafe, I think I already said. Uchenna Nwasu will play his first game in almost a year. Yeah. That's going to be a huge boost for the team.
Yeah, they already lead the league in pressure rate. Mm-hmm. And then,
which is a little surprising that they're still there after last week, because they got no pressure on Goff whatsoever. So that would tell you how good how good they were the previous weeks when people were healthy.
Well, and then their blitz rate is only 15th at 23.9. If they hold on to that percentage, 23.9 for the season, I think that even drops down even further. That's great. Only getting that kind of pressure with 4 players is great. That's kind of the signature of a Mike McDonald defense. He did that as well in Baltimore, was very successful with that. But having Derek Hall have the season that he's having, he's having kind of a Pro Bowl level season, really emerging this year, take a huge step forward from last season. Boye Mafe is having a legit season as well.
Oh, yeah.
He's injured last week, but prior to that, just really doing very well. Leonard Williams having a very nice understated season. And then you add Uchenna Nwasu, Keith, to that mix already that is successful. This thing is really going to turn up, and you can only put so many guys on the field at the same time, but it's nice to be able to have that depth and that rotation. We're not even talking about Byron Murphy right now because he's going to miss his 2nd consecutive game, but you get him back and healthy down the stretch, maybe even by the 49er game next week. Mm-hmm. And this is a formidable defense. Add that to an offense that, if you can kind of keep going out of that Lions game, where they had 38 first downs, not saying they're going to do that every week, but they're able to move the ball. They're able to execute, score points, be successful in the red zone, convert on 3rd downs. This is a team that's going to be very competitive this year down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be the fun part, right? I do see that they're in the middle of 3 games in 11 days between Monday, Sunday, Thursday. 3 games in 11 days, and they came into this stretch banged up, injured, 5 of their starting defenders out, that kind of thing. And for them to be in a spot where they're actually healthier now, halfway through this stretch than they were when they started, is kind of miraculous. This is definitely a winnable game. It was a winnable game if those guys had to miss again.
Yes.
That's where the Giants are. But they kind of need this one because Detroit's a really, really good team. And because of, the injuries and a couple of mistakes, the Seahawks couldn't get that one. But now they've got this game, which is winnable. And then they go up against San Francisco next week. And the 49ers, while not the juggernaut, they've been in the last few years, at least so far.
Brock Purdy's looking really, really good.
Brock Purdy's looking amazing.
Yeah. But they're going to be down McCaffrey. Their defense hasn't been as formidable.
Especially against the pass. Their defense has not been very good. But overall, that's still a tough game. It's still a tough game on Thursday. It's possible they could lose that one on Thursday. So, sorry. They need this one because
that would allow them to go into that game 4-1, still leading the division. Yeah. And even if they were to drop that San Francisco game, they'd still be looking pretty good.
And if for some reason they fumble this game away, they're looking at possibly losing 3 straight and dropping from 3-0 to 3-3.
That's crazy. That flip. Yeah.
Yeah. This feels like an important game to keep the season on track. And yeah, it's early. I get it, all that, but some of it is about just momentum and everyone's thought process and all of that. Getting this going into that other game, 4-1 is first place in the division is different than going into it 3-2 and feeling on the verge of, having that great start just be washed out.
That's exactly right. I mean, you sometimes you lose track of that as fans, the overall picture of how things are going, and because it's such a game-to-game league, and certainly should be. But at the same time, you really your goal as a team, and this team's goal is to not only get to the playoffs, they want to do that for sure, but to do something when they get there, and so. In order for them to keep track on that first goal is they want to over a 500 record throughout the entire season. They don't want to be good and then fall back and then try to be good again and then ebb and flow like that. They want to have this consistent effort. And this starts with this game. Now, this is definitely a winnable game, a game on the schedule that both of us predicted as a win early. So it's something that comes as no surprise that we're favored in this game. But you got to go take care of business. I think I'm not so concerned about our Mike McDonald team being undisciplined as far as doing what's necessary week in, week out to maintain that team integrity, the as far as the mission, and not overlooking a team. So we'll see how that goes because in this kind of second quarter, if you will, of the season, they faced this New York Giants team at home. Then they've got the San Francisco 49ers at home on Thursday night. And then they're on the road against Atlanta, who just had a fantastic game by Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, they looked awful when the season started, but Cousins has shook off some of the rust and has looked really good the last couple of games. And they look like they've gone from being a bottom feeder, which is what they looked like the first couple of games, to being a decent team.
Division. Yeah,
it's a really weak division, but
right.
But yeah, they definitely could win that division, and they probably should at this point, looking at how they're playing. But that looked like an easy game. Before the season. And then after that, we're at home against Buffalo, and then at home against the Rams. We've got a nice stretch here. 4 of the next 5 games at home. We need to take care of those. Now, I know Buffalo's at home is going to be tough. On the road in Atlanta, that's going to be harder now that I think than it was that San Francisco game. Then the Rams at home, and then we have a bye. The Rams look bad.
But this stretch right here is one of the key stretches in the entire
absolutely
season.
Yep, because you have 4 out of 5 at home, and you got to take
4 out of those 5.
Yeah, or at least 3. you just you can't
the way this team is playing. My expectations are they take 4. I mean,
no, and I'm with you on that. I'm just saying, like, if what's the final goal of getting into the playoffs, you've got to be able to take 3 out of this. If you don't, then maybe we reevaluate.
So then they'd be 6-3 coming into the bye.
Mm-hmm.
If that is true, what you say is true. Now they could be 7-2 heading into the bye. Now 7-2 looks a lot better to me than 6-3. So I'd like to see them 7-2, only because my predictions would be perfect.
That's okay
at the bye up to that moment, and I ended up with 12 wins on the season. So I would like to be able to get there. I think this team has that ability to be able to do that. And we'll see. So let's talk about the guard competition at right guard for just a second. Now, we signed Jason Peters, which gives the team some flexibility, I think, into the future. I don't think he's going to be ready to play right away.
Last year, it took 3 games of him being on the practice squad before he was in shape enough to play.
That sounds about right. And I think that if that is true, that puts him in the realm of getting him here for, maybe the Atlanta game, if we should need him,
or the Buffalo game,
or the Buffalo game at home, which seems more. Well, it depends. If there's injury in this mix, that could be a kind of a rush job to get him back. I want to talk about the guard competition because we saw Christian Haynes really get some serious snaps in a game. Before that, he only had 15 snaps for the season, 10 snaps in one game, 5 in another. This time he had 40% of the snaps. I thought he looked great. I think Corbin Smith did kind of an film analysis and wrote about it. I didn't get all the numbers, but he had an indication coming out of that film analysis that Anthony Bradford looked a little suspect out of that, and Christian Haynes looked like he earned the starting spot. Yeah,
a little suspect. If that was the actual case, then he's being generous.
That was my words. He didn't say that, but that was kind of it, is that Anthony Bradford did not play as well as Christian Haynes in the same game, given the same assignments and so forth. And it looked like Corbin was saying Christian Haynes deserves to start. And I don't know what the weight is here.
Yeah. And I would agree with him from what I've seen.
But Mike McDonald says they're going to use a similar timeshare against the Giants.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the game. Maybe they want the proof, and now Christian Haynes goes out and maybe he gets the 60-40 reps, and maybe he takes this job.
Well, and I think part of it is also they want to see if Bradford can develop into the player they think he can be. Because, they talk about raw power, and his size and strength is just crazy. And he's got to improve his technique and stop getting on over his toes too far, and actually moving his feet and mirroring better and things like that. And if they can continue to develop him, I think that's what they want, because they want to be able to have these 2 guys be, 2 guards, 2 of their offensive linemen going forward. But Bradford needs to take a big leap for that to be part of the case. At this point, you want to get Haynes in there because he's not only part of your future, he's part of your present. Get him in there and play him, and worry about developing Bradford's secondary. But I think they want Bradford to develop, because it's not like Tomlinson on the other side at left guard has been good. He really has not been good. And so at some point you're going to want to, maybe it's after the season, but at some point you need to move on from him.
So, yeah. And okay, so let's talk about this Jason Peters thing for just a second. So they go out and sign him just like they did last year. Now, usually at this point of the season, when you have a signing and you've got injuries, it tells me a couple things. They don't expect George Fant, or they're very disappointed in Stone Forsythe, and they don't expect George Fant to be healthy in the next week or two, and that they're really concerned about Abe Lucas.
That's the last part that bothers me and worries me, because if they were looking at Abe Lucas coming back in the next couple of weeks, even if he's just coming back to start practicing, and then they've got 2 weeks to get him geared up, I don't think they would have signed Peters. The same is true though for Fant, because Fant's time on the IR is up before Halloween, and so they'll be able they're going to get him back. So one of those two guys, and unfortunately, it's starting to feel, even though we don't get updates, it's just starting to feel like it might be Lucas is not progressing in the way that the team wants. And
which could potentially mean a second surgery. It could potentially mean next year.
Yeah.
Or never. My thought process, and I hate to even speculate, but I'm going to, is that I think that Abe Lucas has played his last game as a Seattle Seahawk. And
God damn, I would hate that.
I would too.
God,
and I'm just, when you start talking about the expectations of, well, he's not going to make training camp, but he's going to be potentially ready for game one. And then now it's pushed out to, let's put him on IR. He'll be available after week 4. Now he's not able to practice still. And he's, maybe mid-season. And, they and the lack of disclosure, and they don't have to, but the lack of anything is telling me that psychologically they're kind of prepared to go the entire season without him being available. And it really, I feel bad for him, because I know he's working hard. He's working hard, and it's just not responding, like physically not responding. You can't do anything about that as a human being. It is what it is. And so you either need to have a further correction or you need more time. And it just seems to, and you heard Pete Carroll before he left use the word chronic. And all of those things can be true, and I think they are. And I think that it doesn't bode well to have a player with a knee so poor that it's not responding to surgery, that, and I don't know. And we don't even know what it was. Like for me, I'm thinking, you remember Greg Oden from the Portland Trailblazers?
Oh yeah.
And he came in, he had bum knees to begin with, and then he ended up having what they call a microfracture surgery, which was to help correct the patellar tendon kneecap. So what they did is they drill a whole bunch of holes, little teeny holes in his kneecap, like all over the place. And it helps with blood flow and help strengthen and attach that tendon to that cap. I have a feeling. Now, I have no idea what his injury is. And they have never said what the procedure was, but anything that's not healing after months and months and months had to have been pretty major surgery. And I'm thinking it has to do with the patellar tendon and some sort of microfracture surgery or something to get this thing going.
That's possible, but the patellar tendon is something that can be repaired. And typically, like with microfracture surgery, there's different ones that they can do. There's different, that term is used in for a couple of different procedures. One's the one you described. The other one is where, it's kind of the same idea where they use it to actually make the joint bleed by breaking the bend of the end of the bone, and that blood comes in and actually helps reinforce the cartilage, and it's more of a cartilage rebuilding process, you can't rebuild the cartilage,
which would indicate that he didn't have any cartilage to begin with, or very little. So he had bone on bone situation, which is the chronic part that Pete Carroll talks about. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Is
Yeah,
like
because
this has to be a structural
there
situation.
just isn't, when you're bone on bone in your knee or anywhere, there isn't a lot of what you could do. Like, you can have the microfracture surgery, which will basically build up, some scar tissue there to try and help, but it's not cartilage. It's not the same. And that is a chronic thing. That is just something that you live with. And if that's the case, I hope that,
he can still walk. I mean, you're talking about, instead of having the goal of playing, you're talking about the goal of just having a quality life.
Yeah, being able to walk and do your normal life without constant pain. Because bone on bone it's worse than it sounds. It really is.
I get that once in a while, in my knee, and that's from earlier playing,
Yep.
ball for, yeah. So anyway, I don't want to speculate, but the team has left us with with speculation as being the only thing that we can really talk about with him, because there is no other information. I don't know if we'll ever find out unless it comes directly out of his mouth, like what he went through, what the root causes were, and so forth.
Or if he does ever make it back to the active roster, then his knee is probably going to keep him on the injured, even if it's full practice. It'll keep him on the injury report forever. And at that point, the team is much more likely to, comment and give us more details. So
interesting. Okay. So the one last thing I want to talk about, just as far as how the season is going, in terms not directly related to this game, but I would like to see something come out of this game, is the point differential that we have. So right now we're at -3. We're not in a positive. We're in a -3 turnover differential. The Seahawks forced 3 turnovers in their season opener against the Broncos, and since then they haven't had a turnover.
Yeah.
Last year, Mike McDonald and the Ravens led the league with 31 takeaways. Tell me how they get on track.
A lot of turnovers is they've had where they've knocked the ball out and it's just gone out of bounds, or it's bounced directly to one of the offensive linemen, that kind of stuff. Like, there's been some weird luck involved that hasn't created the turnovers. It's also hard to get turnovers when the opposing quarterback isn't able to throw the ball because you're all over them and they're just running for their life and throwing it out of bounds or whatever. Usually those kind of situations lead to turnovers because eventually they stop throwing it away and they start forcing it because they're behind. But it's all statistically, it's all small sample size at this point, and it will take time for all of these things to kind of even out. I'm not that concerned because of the way this defense plays and how good they are at getting after the quarterback.
Mike McDonald did say that it was going to be a point of emphasis in this, right at this point, it's a point of emphasis. He wants to make sure that they don't give up sound tackling, that they don't jump, routes and give up big plays. Yeah. But at the same time, it's a way that they play. And like you just said, it's a way that the defense plays, swarming to the ball, et cetera, getting your hands in there, punching things out, et cetera, playing physical. And they do all those things. Now, you just throw away the Lions game. I mean, with Jared Goff going 18 for 18 and stuff, there just wasn't enough pressure there, enough disruption to basically force anything.
You had a bunch of guys from the practice squad out there playing. This was like a preseason roster on the front seven, because you had a few starters that were in there, but very few. And for the most part, it was all backups and guys that aren't on the actual roster. So yeah, I'm not that concerned about that game. But the other ones, like they're doing the things that necessary to create turnovers. They're getting after the quarterback. They're getting, strong tackles, and they're leading games. Like, those are the things that lead to collecting turnovers defensively, is being in the lead and, creating that level of pressure. It'll come. I honestly think it'll come. You've got guys on this team that are ball hawks. And
last year, Devin Witherspoon had 7 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 quarterback hits playing against the Giants, and a third quarter 97-yard pick six.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely the game of the year for him as a rookie. So it'd be nice to have that kind of repeat performance. I'm looking for a few interceptions in this game. I really think Seattle's going to get after the quarterback, and it's going to make a very long day for Daniel Jones. And
getting all those guys back, getting just Leonard Williams and Mafe back makes such a huge difference for them. But they're also getting Nuwasu and everybody else except for Byron Murphy. But yeah, they are going to be able to get after the quarterback. And it's not just like, okay, the interceptions. I want to see them, because they're getting there, and I know they're focusing on sound tackling and getting people to the ground. But at some point, you're going to start going for the ball in those situations when the quarterback's running, and getting those strip sacks matters. And so I believe, though, that this will this turnover situation will shift in a way that makes a lot more sense for Seattle.
So prediction time. What do you got?
Oh man, I don't think the Giants keep this close. I don't.
I see them struggling to score 3 points. I mean, it's really bleak for them.
Yeah. I honestly would agree. I think the Seahawks run the ball, shorten the game, get the time, possession thing going, because they know they can. This will be like the Miami game where they've got a lead, and offense, they're going to try and just take the air out of the ball a little bit. And I see them, this going in as like 27. I'll give them 27-6.
Yeah, I was going to say something like 27-9. I was thinking there's a potential that Seattle turns the ball over on offense just because Geno's trying to stretch it out and go for a home run hit, and they may get an interception or something.
But even then,
there's a mistake.
That's still an arm punt, and that puts them
right
well back, and so then they've got to drive to get. I'm more worried about a fumble or.
I'm worried about a little bit about a forced situation for Geno in this game, only because I'm going to give a little bit of credit to their defensive line. I mean, their defensive line is pretty decent and has the ability to get pressure and force a turnover. Their back end isn't horrible. They've got Tyler Nubin, Deontay Banks, a few other, Isaiah Simmons, who has the same problem he had in Arizona as a player without a position, but still a good athletic player. But I still see a big score in Seattle's favor in this game just because of our defense. I think our defense comes back in a big way and really kind of just gives them no hope whatsoever.
I think the key in all of this, like, Geno has thrown 4 picks in 4 games. That can't continue. Like, that absolutely can't continue. And
2 of them have been his fault. 2 of them are just kind of fluky, but 2 of them have been his fault, and he could have had 2 others where they dropped the ball.
At least that's the type of thing that needs to get cleaned up. And I know some of that we talk about Seattle's front creating pressure and therefore giving other defensive backs opportunities for interceptions. The offensive line is giving up a lot of pressure and causing him to throw off platform and that kind of stuff. So I'm not trying to just say that, this is straight up, he's playing poorly, because he's not. But he does need to take care of the ball a little better and not give up those, give up the ball so often. And so the 4 picks in 4 games is a little worrisome to me.
Other than that, let's go win. I mean, let's get this game, return that loss around and get that out of our mind permanently and go forward with a 4-1 record. That would be fantastic, and get into Thursday night against the 49ers. Now, I hope they don't look forward as much as I'm looking forward to that Thursday night game. They got to take care of business at hand right in front of them, and I believe they will. I think the Giants just are so deficit in talent against a team like Seattle. This game shouldn't be close, and I hope Seattle doesn't play down to that, and I don't believe they will. So,
nope. And I'm going to actually be at this game. So,
nice, fun.
Yep, taking one of my kids up, picking up my dad, and we've got a 3 generation of Myersmen going to this particular football game to
fun.
do our part. So,
well, good luck with parking or whatever you decide to do. Like, I don't know. It's hard. The choices are hard, especially coming in from the south. It's like, it's tough.
Yeah. Parking situation is pretty bad. We're getting there early though. So
yeah,
we're going to be up there. We're going to be up there real early. So hopefully it won't be that bad, but we'll get it figured out.
It'll be bad. It'll be bad, dude. Last time I was up there, I think I was up there 4 hours early to get parking, and it was still like $125, and we were half a mile away. And it's stupid. It's stupid. So budget for parking, or buy something ahead of time. Like they sell parking ahead of time, or get into like, Kent or Renton and take some sort of light rail or transit up there. Because it's bad. And then you have to figure out how to get out of there. Like, do you wait? Do you take your time? Do you have dinner somewhere, down there and then get back? But yeah, it's interesting. So good luck.
Yeah. We always prepay parking, but and for me, it puts me closer to the stadium, which is nice, but it's a lot longer in the car getting to that parking spot because of how close it is. So, that's the problem.
Yeah. It used to be so easy. Like when I had season tickets from the very beginning, early until about 89, you could park for free. You had all the viaduct parking, all that stuff that is now almost paved over. You can't, there's so many businesses down there, and then they put the condos in the parking lot where the Kingdom was, and they've eliminated so many parking options close to the stadium that everything is pushed out so far, and it's crazy.
Half the Kingdom parking is now Safeco Field.
Yeah.
On top, and the hotels and the condos and everything. But you've also got Safeco Field sitting there. So, and that's not exactly a small facility. So, yeah.
All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Mars NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook on Twitter, SeahawksPlaybook.com. Also on any podcast platform that you choose, and our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, leave us a comment, all that good stuff. So until next time, and good luck with the game, everyone. Have fun. We'll talk to you later. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.